That sounds fun. That sounds fun.
Hi, friends. Welcome to another episode of That Sounds Fun. I'm your host, Annie F. Downs, and I'm so happy to be here with you today. Today on the show, I get to talk with my friend Davey Blackburn. You've likely heard pieces of Davey's story before as he walked through a horrific tragedy in 2015 when his expecting wife was killed during a break-in at their home. Now, Davey's using that pain and the redemption found through it to help other people navigate their own tragedies. Davey is the founder and director of Nothing is Wasted Ministries, the host of the Nothing is Wasted podcast, and tomorrow, his book, Nothing is Wasted, releases into the world. No matter what you've walked through, you've probably had a painful experience in your life and found yourself asking, where is God? And Davey is helping us all figure out how to navigate those questions in this brand new book. And as a heads up, you'll probably want my miniBFFs to sit out on this one since we're approaching some really heavy topics. So here's my conversation with my friend, Davey Blackburn.
That sounds fun.
Long overdue. Davey Blackburn, welcome to That Sounds Fun.
Oh, Annie F. Downs, thank you.
How is this your first time? I'm personally embarrassed. So I'm very
Don't
sorry.
Don't be. I intentionally have just not gone on other people's podcasts.
Really?
Well, we're doing our podcast, and
Yeah.
I'm like, it's so busy, and with the ministry, it's been
Yeah.
growing since we started it in 2019. That
Yeah.
it was just like, it'll have its time and its
Yeah.
season. So
Okay,
thanks.
talk
This is an
about-
honor.
Oh, it's a treat for me. I'm going to ask you what sounds fun to you, but first I want you to talk about your podcast for a second.
Yeah.
You started it in 2017. Oh, gee.
Yeah.
What do you love about podcasting?
Well, I get to hear a lot of other people's stories.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that keeps building my faith. You know, it was
Yeah,
very
wow.
important early in my healing journey to hear other people's stories because I was borrowing faith from people.
Yeah.
And it was like I'd meet people and I'd go, oh my goodness, like you had insights that I didn't have. You showed me a perspective of God that I didn't have. Yeah. And that was salve to my soul. Hey, everybody, listen to this person's story.
Yeah.
And now we just keep getting to do that. And I sit across the table or across a Zoom call from somebody. And I'm like, I can't believe, and yet I can because he's God, but I can't believe the personal ways that he keeps showing up for people.
Yeah.
It's so specific. And so I just love that.
What day do y'all release?
We release on Thursdays.
Okay,
Every
great.
week. Yep.
Okay, talk strategy. Tell me why Thursday.
That was when we did it. I don't know. There was no strategy involved. I think it was because our original engineer, when we first started, had read somewhere that Thursdays was a good time to release.
Yeah.
And so he started on Thursdays.
So you did.
It happened to be good for our rhythm when I was
Yeah.
pastoring a church.
Yeah.
It was like, for whatever reasons, the rhythms of our week. So we did that. And then we just kept it that way because
Yeah.
it was consistency for our community.
Yep.
We wanted to make sure that they could trust and rely that every Thursday a new episode was going to be released. So,
Thursdays are a very good day to
yeah.
release.
We thought maybe weekends. I think that had something to do with it.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
people,
That's right.
but then enough of the rest of the week for commute. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
I don't know.
I love, there are so many people listening who have their own podcasts. And so I love when other podcasters are on to talk strategy and like, how do you decide how long y'all talk? Tell me that. How do you decide how long the conversation is?
Well, originally we were just kind of letting it run, and then we were realizing that it probably stays best in that hour container. So 45 minutes to an hour, and it gives somebody a chance to tell their full story, right? A full story arc. We don't do 30 minutes because 30 minutes doesn't give enough time to actually be story form, right? And I want people to say like, hey, this is what was happening. These were the details of this. This is how God showed up. Because I think stories really move people and inspire people. You know, we talk about a lot that stories and statistics are the two things that really inspire change. But the story is really what moves the heart, right? The statistics are the things that are like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
If you're a science brain. But the story is really what moves the heart.
I'm teaching at Crosspoint on Sunday, and I'm talking for a second about being single. And I'm giving the stat that 24% of people adults in church are unmarried currently. But in our world, it's more like 45%.
Right.
But then I'm also telling a story because there will be people who go 1 in 4.
Wow, that's crazy.
That is crazy. I mean, when in 1970, the census said that it was 26% of adults were single at all. Can you imagine? And now we're over 40%, closer to 45%. Anyway, stats are wild to me. I love stats. I live for stats. We joke about not being a chartaholic around here. Like you don't just look at charts, but the stories, like you said, which is one of the reasons I love Nothing is Wasted, the book and the podcast, is that the stories are what make you go, oh, that's not my story, but I can
You
get
can
something.
see yourself in that story.
Yeah,
and
that's why we love Taylor Swift.
Yeah,
It's not our stories, but we'll sing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, let me ask you, and then we're going to dive in. Let me ask you what sounds fun to you. Because it's the 10th year of the show. We're leading with that. So
you
tell
will
me what sounds
appreciate
fun
this because my wife, Christy, is an Enneagram 7.
Congratulations. Nice marrying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
What are you?
Fun as I'm a 3.
Yeah, for sure. I only had to see your arm muscles to know you're an Enneagram 3.
I'm a wing 4. I like to wing into my 4, get into my feels.
Yeah.
But she, her definition of life is fun. Like we're just gonna, and that's her love language. So anything that we can do together that's new experiences that she introduces me to fun. As a 3, I tend to not have a lot of fun. I'm like working and achieving a lot of times. And she's the one that goes, hey, let's put our head up and let's have some fun.
Man, a 3 and a 7 are a diabolical good combo because I feel like Suzanne Stabile maybe is who said, partnership, a marriage of a 3 and a 7. The question is, the statement is, not only are we going to have fun, we're going to have the best fun.
Right.
Yeah.
We're
so she brings
extra.
you the idea and you go, let me tell you how we can maximize. Yes, that's exactly what happens. That's exactly what happens.
It's so cool. And then we get a lot done for the kingdom too.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So,
yeah. And she keeps it light at the right times.
That's right. Which is ironic that we lead a ministry for pain.
Yeah. Okay. I want us to tell a little bit of that story.
Yeah.
I love seeing what God has done for you on this side.
Yeah.
But what a journey to get. I mean, Christy is such a gift.
Oh, man.
What a wild gift. When you tell about seeing her at CrossFit, I mean, what a wild, in the book, by the way, everyone, there's a book that comes out tomorrow when they hear this. The book releases tomorrow called Nothing is Wasted. But so back us up and give us kind of the summary that I'm sure you're having to do a lot, but I would love for you to do a little bit of the summary so people can actually put together the story they know from the news with your voice.
Well, in 2015, I was a pastor and church planter in Indianapolis with my wife, Amanda. We'd been married 7 years. We had a 15-month-old, and we were pregnant with our second. And we had just got to the place, I mean, you're in church world. We planted this church, and when you plant a church, you feel like that God calls you to plant a forest, but drops you in the middle of a parking lot.
Yeah, that's it. That's it.
It was a lot of hard work at the beginning, but we had just got to this place where our church hit this critical mass threshold. Amanda looked at me just a couple of weeks before all this happened. She said, I love our life. I feel like our dreams are finally coming true.
Yeah.
Everything we've endeavored to do, all this hard work, it's starting to pay off.
Yeah.
And we just were in a very sweet season. And then on November 10th, 2015, I left to go to the gym early in the morning. It was a normal Tuesday. It's what I did every Tuesday. But there were 3 men they were on a random crime spree through our city, through Indianapolis. And they broke into the home 3 doors down from me, saw me leave for the gym, decided to take that opportunity to break into our home. And Amanda got caught up in that scuffle. Now, as we hear testimonies and what happened, now almost 9 years later, we think that she was trying to protect Weston.
Wow.
And he remained untouched and unharmed in his crib the entire time. Yeah. But I came home and found her. She was shot 3 times. And when I found her, she was lying on our living room floor, surrounded in blood. She was still breathing, but she was unconscious. And there was no context for me to think that somebody had broken into my home.
Right. Because there was a ladder that fell.
A ladder had fallen, lamps had fallen, but as I called the paramedics, and it took 3 minutes for them to get there. It felt like it took 3 hours.
I am sure. I can't imagine.
Because you're sitting in this really
3
traumatic
minutes, that's actually
it was
very
so fast. I couldn't believe it when I heard that. But as I'm sitting there with her, I'm noticing all of these things that were out of place, like credit cards strewn out all over the floor, different things that were really disheveled. And I'm going, what happened? Why was she buying something this early? But 2 weeks prior to this, you'll appreciate this, she had gotten this sense, and we were on a walk, and she said, Davey, I feel like God's leading us to a season of pain.
You put this in the book.
Yeah, it was
That's
this
unbelievable.
this sense of discernment. And she actually told me, I think we're going to miscarry this baby.
Oh, wow.
And she had a piece about it. She was like, I hope not. But she said, I just feel like we've lived a pretty charmed life up to this point, and we're ministering to so many people who are broken and hurting, but we can't quite empathize with them. And I just feel like the Lord is leading us into a season of pain so that we'll be able to minister to people in pain.
Dude.
Told me that. And so when I walked in, all of a sudden that conversation came back. I'm like, we just miscarried the baby. She's going to be, okay, let's get to the hospital.
Right.
And when I get to the hospital, I find out she has 3 bullet wounds in her.
Yeah.
And the prognosis was not grim, or not very good. It was very grim. And she, 24 hours later, passed away. And that was November 11th, 2015, the day she passed away. It was 4 years to the day that we had packed a moving van up and moved from South Carolina to Indianapolis to plant a church, to go and follow this call that God had placed in our life.
Gee whiz.
So my world turned upside down that day.
Yeah. We were talking about it in the office last week, and one of our staff is from Indy.
Yeah.
And of course, I saw it real time because of our shared worlds, but he was like, it was the center of the conversation in Indianapolis.
Yeah, it was.
And now all 3 of those men are in jail?
They're all 3 in jail. The 2 accomplices took plea agreements to testify against the shooter.
Yeah.
Which really bolstered the case. I'm very appreciative of that. But they're all 3 in jail, and the shooter, he'll be in for the rest of his life.
Yeah. Let's just jump there.
Yeah.
We're going to weave back and forth only
Yeah, for
because there
sure.
were some really important parts to me of this particular part. I want people to read in the book. You talk a lot about the racial tension of the 3 young men were African American.
Right.
You and your wife are white,
Right.
and what that stirred in you. I think that's really important for people to read. But now you have a relationship with one of those young men, right?
Well, on some level, yeah. And I
Yeah.
have relationships with with people around them.
Yeah.
You know? So what you read in the book is that I started feeling this weird. I had never experienced that kind of bias or prejudice before.
Yeah.
But it was partially trauma triggered, right? So I
Sure.
would see a young black man walk down the street, and all of a sudden it would flare up, this anger or this rage. And I'm so grateful because throughout this entire book, what you read is not me, this hero of the story, but like the Lord leading me to these really pivotal
Oh my
paradigm
gosh, so many
shifting
people.
conversations.
Yes, it's amazing.
And that's how God, I think, intervenes in our stories. Sometimes, sometimes He intervenes to prevent things from happening,
Yeah.
but He always intervenes to produce something good out of it. And He uses so
that's
many
right.
great people in our lives to do that.
Yes.
And so I ended up coming across this conversation through a series of conversations with this black pastor in our city, who knew the foster parents to the shooter.
Oh, wow.
The foster parents to the shooter were pastors' family.
Oh, gosh.
And Larry's story, he told me at Starbucks like a month after Amanda passed away. So I'm still like, I'm just in shock and in
he just
fog.
told you a month after Amanda passed away. He's telling you about
we're
the
in
shooter's
Starbucks
story.
and he's telling me, let me tell you Larry Taylor's story. Gosh. He said when he was 12, he was dropped off at his aunt's doorstep because his dad was in prison. His mom was strung out on drugs. And they tried to sober him up. They would try to, but he would always go on these bingers and he'd go off for a couple of weeks. And one day he goes off and he's 18 years old, doesn't come back. And the next thing they know is cops and investigators are there to make arrests.
Yeah.
And so as I started to learn their stories, I began to realize just the humanity of all of it, the brokenness, the systemic poverty. Like I started getting immersed into some of this, and I had someone really speak over me this idea of like, it's normal what you're feeling, even though you know it's not right. And just because one person who's profiled a particular way did this to you does not mean that everybody who is profiled in that particular way is the same way.
Right.
And I think that really, it was the first time I was ever confronted with that kind of like racial bias or prejudice. And I think that was such a helpful way for him to say that to me.
Yeah.
To help me to relate to the fact that like, hey, there are people on the internet right now that are saying that you are the one that is behind all of this in murdering your wife. And he said, well, you've heard stories like that, right? You've heard stories where husbands have murdered. So, of course, people are going to gravitate to that first before especially they find out the facts. And so understand and have empathy that you're doing on some level the same thing when it comes to this racial prejudice or bias.
Wow.
And that really just peeled things back for me. It was like, oh, okay. And as you begin to learn stories, have relationships, start to understand the other side, that's what began to help me start to go, okay, this, like we're going to be a people that love everybody and that really sit on the other side of the table and have partnerships and friendships with anybody, no matter what their race, no matter what their social economic status is. And it was a very helpful journey for me to go on.
So what does it look like maintaining one of the accomplices named Diano? I mean, in the book, you tell this beautiful story of him turning to you and apologizing, and his mother and grandmother kind of saying,
Right.
look, I mean, I remember saying, she said, look him in the eye, young man.
Yep, she did.
I mean, it just was...
It was powerful.
That is wild. So do you have, what does it look like now?
Right.
I mean, that was not that long ago.
No,
I
it
went and
wasn't
read the news.
It wasn't very long ago
I
at all.
Googled all the articles about this and I was like, dude, how'd you get this out in time? How'd you get this in the book?
Well, yeah. I mean, to answer that question, this has been sitting pending since 2017. I mean, 20 chapters of it have.
Wow.
And then because it was tendered, the manuscript was tendered to the court because it was basically admissible evidence.
Oh, wow.
So it was stalled out in publishing for years. which is interesting. Then the last 2 chapters, you kind of get the catch up of like what God has done, which I think is really appropriate because the first 20 chapters is the journey that God takes me to like really kind of heal me and get me to a place where I believe nothing is wasted. The last 2 chapters, you begin to see, oh, this is God actually implementing.
Yeah, that's right.
Nothing is wasted.
That's exactly right.
So we were able to get it out pretty quick after that. But you're right. It was a profound experience to sit across from Diano and to have him bypass the judge when he has an opportunity to like plead for mercy in his sentencing, to bypass his family who is there representing him and look directly at me and just break down. And for like 2 minutes, he couldn't gain his composure. And he said, he said, I can't believe you just told me that you forgive me. He said, if I were you, I would hate me.
Wow.
And it was just a remarkable moment right there where like something broke in the spiritual in that room. And we all felt it. We all sensed it. And it was like, this is what happens when you decide, even though nothing in your heart wants to do this, when you decide to operate and align yourself with God's upside down kingdom and fight with weapons of righteousness, right? Not come back in this situation with bitterness and vengeance and anger, but to go, hey, I'm going to come back with love, with mercy, with forgiveness. And I'm going to be a conduit of forgiveness in this moment right here because I've experienced the radical forgiveness of Jesus. The way that I experienced the radical forgiveness of Jesus, I was 7 years old. I read about it in the book. I was 7 years old. I think I was 8 years old. It was at an Easter play. I just turned 8. And the pastor said, Jesus was murdered for your sin and for my sin. That's how I heard the gospel, which is a very unconventional way to hear the gospel.
Yeah, that's a strong take.
I preach the gospel all the time. I don't say that. It's a very strong stance.
Right.
But how providential of God that at 8 years old, I would hear the gospel in that way, and it would be paradigm shifting for me.
And remember it.
And then at 30 years old, that would happen to me. And what happened right after the pastor shared that with me is I saw in this Easter play that he was doing this. Jesus on the cross, he yelled out, Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing.
Wow.
And that's how I came to know Christ. And so then here I am, a pastor preaching, hey, it's a spiritual impossibility for you to experience God's forgiveness and not be willing to extend it. And then I'm confronted with a situation that says, do you really believe that, Davey? And so what was powerful is like for 9 years almost walking in, I'm trusting you, God, with vengeance. I'm trusting you with this kind of pain. I'm not going to try to take on this bitterness and resentment. And then getting to watch Diano and his contrition right there, his heart, his remorse, when I expressed to him, hey, I forgive you. Yeah. It was like this huge full circle thing, and I think that's what redemption is in our stories. I don't think redemption is one day Jesus is going to bring back to us everything we've lost. Yeah. But redemption is really the day that we decide that the enemy's not going to win twice in my life.
Yeah, right.
He's not going to let me get stuck. Yeah. Or I'm not going to let him let me get stuck. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to partner with God. And I'm going to help other people through this. Yeah.
I'm going to read you this quote. I was at an event a couple of weeks ago, and they said, when this is over, I'm going to punch back. And they were talking about the enemy. They were talking about Satan. And they said, when this is over, I'm going to punch back. Wow. And I was like, that's right. I mean, I was like raging.
Yes. Well, what you have to do in situations like this, when there is a very real injustice and an offense done in your life, and you can take this at any degree, right? The degree of like, a family member of yours being murdered, all the way to like, that person said something to me that really offended me, But what you do is you have to take it into the spiritual realm. Yeah. And you go, wait a minute. Okay, who really is the enemy in this? Yes. Well, it's Satan. Yeah. And how do I actually get vengeance on Satan? Well, I do the opposite. I operate in the upside down kingdom. Right. And when I do that, when I purport this idea of love and forgiveness and hope and people come to know Christ, well, who's mad about that? Yeah. Satan. Yeah. That's punching back. Yeah. That's exactly what you're talking about right there.
I think it matters a lot for people to also hear you say 9 years. Yeah. This wasn't 6 months. Nope. This wasn't the next morning. Nope. Though there may be people who can do that. Right. I think it's important for people to hear it's okay to, if it takes 9 years of counseling and life and healing and movement and just living.
It's going to take that. My counselor told me this. It was so helpful. He said, we want God to heal in poof. Yeah. And sometimes he does. Sometimes there's like these deliverance kind of moments, these break free kind of moments. Most of the time he heals in process. Oh, wow. And we have to surrender to that process. Yeah. Because in the middle of that process, as he's healing us from whatever it is that we've gone through, he's like a beautiful surgeon that when we're splayed out on the operating table, he's going to carefully fix whatever's going on to heal us. And then if he finds cancer in there, he's going to pull that out too. Right. And that's usually what happens when we go through pain, trauma, grief, loss. there's something else that comes up. We start to see some of these like maladaptive coping mechanisms that we're starting to lean into.
Yeah.
And they are idols in our life. And God's going, hey, let's address this right here.
Yeah.
You know, like while I have your attention. And that always ends up begging the question, you know, theologically, like, did God cause this to happen? Is that like God's way? It's like, well, I tell people, no, God can't cause evil to happen.
Yeah.
Like,
That's
it's
right.
the very opposite of his nature. He allowed it. And for what
Does that
reason?
make you mad? Were you mad about that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's a big question. Like, I never questioned the existence of God after this because I had seen God work in my life in so many different ways leading up to it.
Yeah.
But I questioned his kindness.
Yeah.
And I was like, hold on, God. Like, you and I had a deal, you know? Like, we were in the middle of your will.
I work for you. If you knew how many times I said, I work for you.
You called us here. Like, this was your idea.
Right.
And why did you not let this, or why did you let this happen? Why did you not prevent this from happening? And so there was a deep wrestling with that between me and the Lord. And what I began to realize as I peeled it back, which, by the way, I think wrestling is very important.
Yeah,
I think
same.
it's like, people are like, you shouldn't question God. No, I think you should.
No, you better. Yeah.
Question God.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're going to walk away from the faith.
Yes.
But we have
Yes.
very real, difficult questions because our life sometimes doesn't reconcile with the God we've created.
Yes. Yes.
And we've created God into our image, thinking he operates a certain way, and God wants to recalibrate that in these seasons. And so you have to wrestle deeply. And as I peeled it back, I started realizing he is good. He is kind. He is loving. In fact, he is a loving father. And he's a protector. And he protected Amanda in ways I never could have. Her dad never could have. Nobody ever could have on this side of. But his perspective is not tied and tethered to the trappings of this world like we are.
That's good. Yeah.
He has an eternal perspective.
Yeah.
And as I began to wrestle with him, my perspective began to get lifted into that. And I think that's why it's necessary to wrestle in those seasons.
A couple of weeks ago, a sentence came to me when the Lord and I were dealing with some things. And the sentence was, anger leads to intimacy. And I thought,
So good.
I think you're right. I think I've been hesitant to be angry with you because I'm scared of admitting that. And also, you're married to a 7. Anger is not an emotion we
That's
attach.
a powerful, I don't like that one.
Yeah, we just don't go there. We can reframe so quickly. I'm not mad. It'll be fine. It's all gonna be fine. What do you want to do next?
Right.
What's the next thing? You know, like we can just reframe on a dime.
Right.
And so in the conversation, you are going to love this. In the conversation, I'm saying to the Lord, okay. Here's what I'm angry about. And he says, can I tell you something I'm angry about? And then I got the Holy Spirit really convicted me about something I had been doing not well.
Wow.
And I thought, oh yeah, anger leads to intimacy. And just like I had just read Job, my life is not Job, but I'd just been reading Job. And I realized that even in when God is talking back to Job, he's going, hey, you don't get it. I'm unhappy here too because you're not getting this. And it felt so intimate with the Lord to be like, oh, I thought I was just going to yell at you.
Wow.
But you've got some feedback.
Right.
Okay, you got some feedback with me? Okay, I can hear your feedback.
He tells Job, he's like, ready yourself. Like, okay, strap on your jock strap and get ready for this one. That's what he tells him. He's like, But it was 40 chapters into it. Like Job had to wrestle for a while.
That's it.
And I think that's what's so important and that we miss so often. Like, this is the idea of lament. I'm grateful that the conversation has turned quite a bit into, over the past 10 years, I would say.
Yeah.
Grief, lament, maybe even just since COVID. Like, people are talking about this more.
Far more than when you were living it, yes.
Yes, exactly. We need to enter into this space where we wrestle with the very difficult questions because that's where we find and meet God.
That sounds fun.
Hey friends, just interrupting this conversation. Tell you about one of our incredible partners, Our Place. Have y'all seen Our Place's cookware? Not only is it so cute, but it is non-toxic too. Our Place is a mission-driven and female-founded brand that makes beautiful kitchen products that are healthy and sustainable. Their products are made without PFAS and Teflon. In comparison, most of today's non-stick pans do contain PFAS, also known as forever chemicals, which are under increasing global scrutiny for their impact on the environment and our health. Our producer, Johnny, was the first one who was raving about their products, and oh my gosh, he is right. There's so so many fun colors to choose from. They're super versatile. And Our Place is also changing the game by offering non-toxic appliances too. I need you to look up the Wonder Oven, y'all. It is a 6-in-1 air fryer toaster oven. It is so cute. It is so cute. Find out why Our Place has 75,000 5-star reviews on their award-winning products. And they've been mentioned in the New York Times, Bon Appetit, and more. Go to FromOurPlace.com and you enter the code TSF at checkout, and my friends get 10% off site-wide. That's FromOurPlace.com, and again, the code is TSF. And Our Place offers a 100-day trial with free shipping and returns. Okay, now back to our conversation with Davey.
That sounds fun.
Okay, so talk to me about parenting Weston through this. He's 11. Is that the math?
He's about to turn 10.
Okay, he's about to turn 10.
about to turn
He
10.
is you and Amanda's son.
That's right.
He's 18 months old when his mother is murdered in
15,
his house.
right.
15 months old when his mother's murdered in his house. How do you parent him in
True.
in the like,
Right.
why does God allow things to happen thing?
Yeah. Well, early on, there were a couple of things that I felt like the Lord just really whispered to me. The worldview that I'm teaching you right now, try to figure out how you can put those tough cookies on the bottom shelf for him in like a kid's perspective.
Wow.
So an example, I remember riding in a car and he's like, I miss mommy. And I said, I do too. Right. It's such an uncomfortable conversation because you want to be like, we're going to be okay. Or, but it's like, I need him and I want him to see me hurt too.
Yeah.
Like this is an example.
Yeah.
It's the same, for the same reason it's important for you when you fly off the handle, you say something you don't mean to someone or to your kids to go back and go, hey, that was wrong of me. I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Will you forgive
Yeah.
me?
Yeah.
They need to see that we're human. And so I told him, I do too. And he goes, I want to go to heaven. And I'm so grateful for the grace that God gave me around that moment. Cause I'm like, my fear was like, oh, he's going to have some kind of escapism that ends up, he's growing up and who knows what this could lead to.
Of
right.
course.
But I just told him, I said, I want to too. And I can't wait. One day we'll get to, buddy.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to see mommy. And she's going to look at us and she's going to say, I'm so proud of you guys.
Yeah.
But right now, God has a lot of people here on this earth that he has asked us to help. And when we've helped everybody that he's called us to help, then we'll get to go home to see Jesus and be with mommy Amanda.
Yeah.
So just trying to reframe his worldview as a kid to go, okay, there's purpose here in life. There's meaning in life. And the purpose is to be a light in the midst of darkness, to introduce people through our story to Jesus, the one who carries us through our stories.
Yeah.
And then one day, right?
Right.
Now, our hope's not here on earth. One
Yeah.
day, our hope is in heaven.
Yeah.
And we're going to get to stand in front of Jesus and hear, well done, good and faithful servant. And then he'll turn and we'll see Amanda and she'll say, I'm so proud of you for how you handled this.
That's right.
So I think just parenting him is, it's quite a journey, Annie. I thought early on that this would have been the best age for this to happen because
So
he didn't
young.
remember her,
Right.
but the body keeps the score. And, you don't learn that until a little bit later. And so there's certainly things that, he's confused about and he doesn't know why he's responding in certain ways and we're confused about. And so the point is we enlist as many experts and help as we possibly can.
Yeah.
So we are constantly seeing different, types of therapists and counselors and different things that just to help us, not to help him necessarily, but to help us know how to guide him and walk him in this.
Yeah.
And one day he's going to be a force for the kingdom.
That's it.
Yeah. He's going to be
He already
somebody.
is as part of the story.
He is.
I think, yeah.
There's a reason that he was spared that day.
Yeah.
God's got a purpose for him.
That's
and I
right.
tell him that every day. Hey, buddy, God's got a huge purpose and plan for you.
How old was he when you and Christy got married?
Oh, he was almost 4.
Okay.
3.5,
Okay.
I think. Mm-hmm.
So this is a question I have, just a curiosity question of how do you involve Amanda's parents and Amber in his life when Christy is mothering? And now he has your family.
Right.
He has Christy's family.
Right.
So is that complicated?
There's a lot of Christmases.
Yeah. I was going to say, is it a lot of that's as I read the book, I thought, what does it look like for Amanda's sister Amber, who's so close and involved in everything with you, and her parents to still be in Weston's life?
Well, we've got a lot of grandparents that we have to figure out how to portion out the time and stuff. But we try to do as much as we can with them.
They live near?
They live 3 hours north of
Okay.
us, northern Indiana, South Bend area. So just a couple weeks ago, we were up doing Cousin Olympics with them. So all the cousins and our cousins, and we went and camped in the backyard, and we're spending a couple of days with them and hanging out. We see them, probably 5-6 times a year. They were just down last week with the cousins helping our grandparents move and stuff. And so we're always trying to involve them in everything that we can do and trying to get up there as much as we can. And that, I think, speaks quite a bit to, honestly, Christy and the graciousness that she has with all of it too.
Yeah.
And that was it's what's so powerful. You read about in the book, just like how almost hopeless that I felt in terms of like, our story is so big, and how am I ever going to have a meaningful marriage again? And how will anybody really step into this? And I know I'm called to like share this story, and I'm preach on stages, and who's going to sit in the front row and like champion me talking about Amanda all the time. Like, how is that going to be even possible, God? And Christy is the perfect person for that.
Yeah.
She is so secure in who she is in the Lord. She considers it, Amanda used to run and Christy ran in college. And so we've kind of thought through this metaphor of like, she's taken a baton from Amanda and passed it on. So it's not like we don't think like, that was then, this is now. We've got our own kind of, but we go, no, this is all of ours together. And we're walking this out together. And
That's
of course,
such kingdom thinking.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
It was, I read a book early on. This was so helpful in my healing journey about missionaries who had gone through tragedy on the mission field.
Yeah.
So one, it showed me, okay, here's other people who are in the center of God's will and they're experiencing tragedy. So something else like Hebrews, or it talks about the wall of faith and people were sawn in two, and you're like, okay. So this isn't abnormal. But then also, there were these two missionaries. They each lost their spouse, and then they end up getting together. But they all knew each other. Yeah. And they said something like, one day in heaven, we're going to all be seated together, and we're going to share stories about the faithfulness and goodness of God together.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's a kingdom perspective right there. One day I'm going to get to introduce Amanda to Christy. And they're going to laugh about all the frustrating
living
things
with you.
And they're going to share stories of Weston. It's going to be a beautiful thing, but that's kingdom.
Yeah. And let me give you a piece of my story. You may have seen this happen, but my sister has a 4-year-old. Okay. When he was 2, they had another baby and with trisomy 18, and he died after 2 months. And so we're right at 2 years from him passing away. And having someone in your family die unnaturally really makes you reassess your heaven theology. Did that happen? Did you already, you were pastoring, so you may have already had a good solid, what is heaven, what happens next theology? Or when Amanda is killed, is there like am I sure of what happens next?
Absolutely. One of the greatest resources I read was Randy Alcorn's Heaven. After that.
So good.
I devoured it because I was like, what is Amanda's life like now? That's what I wanted to know. I wanted to know, what is she doing? Like, what is this really?
Yeah, we'll link to that book so people, if they haven't read it.
So they have one Heaven for kids too. I thought I knew. I had a solid fixture of theology in heaven, but it wasn't a whole lot. And Randy spoke to that. He was like, why are we not talking more about this? Like, we plan for vacations and we do everything we can to go, where are we going? Let's find all the fun things. Let's see what it's going to be like. Heaven is like the infinite vacation. And it's it's our final resting place. So why aren't we studying more? Well, so he talks a lot about, he doesn't try to make any jump any weird conclusions. He goes, what does the Bible say? What can we infer based on that? And it was so helpful. And so, we actually ended up preaching a sermon series after that for our church. What happens to you when you die? And it was all about heaven.
Yeah.
So I experienced
the church was like, are you sure you want you?
But it was special because then I had Amanda's family come and we interviewed, them on stage. And it was probably 9 months or so after it all happened. So it was like, okay, how are we doing as a family, and what's our perspective like right now? So,
and there's a unspoken rule in the world that once you go through one tragedy, that's it. You don't have to go through anymore. And and once you're sad once, you can let it go. Yeah. And then in your story, you talk about that the church you planted ends up closing. And I would imagine you can only be the one who tells us this, but I would imagine there was a death adjacent feel to a very beautiful, important Indianapolis church closing its doors. So will you talk a little bit? Did you ever wrestle with?
Oh goodness,
what are you doing?
I still wrestle with that, Annie.
Wow.
I mean, it's still a very difficult thing for me to wrap my heart around because I loved pastoring that church.
Yeah,
loved it. I see now how I wouldn't be able to pastor that church. I see the kindness and the wisdom of God in all of it.
Yeah.
But especially when it happened, I was like, what are you doing, God?
Yeah.
Because it felt like, okay, I just lost my wife. Now it felt like I lost a baby because it was a thing that we had birthed.
That's right.
And all of these people that we love and I'm like, what? But I think it was really very appropriate for someone to tell me, hey, we don't think about this when it comes to churches, but churches have a life cycle just like we do as humans, right? There's birth, and we all are celebrating the birth of a church.
That's
we have
right.
whole networks surrounding launching churches.
That's right.
But I think that's why, we fumble around when it comes to death as humans. And of course, then we're going to fumble around when it comes to like the closing or the end of a life cycle for a movement of God.
Yes. Wow.
But it is inevitable.
Yes.
It's always, every movement of God has a cycle to it. And it might be a long cycle, but he's always doing something new. And I think that's part of what he invites us into, to not get stuck and maintain the status quo and comfortable in our own spiritual walk.
Wow.
And so I've grown tremendously even through that, of having to wrestle with and deal with some demons, like, and so, so to speak, like some things that the Lord unearthed in me after that, of my own identity and who am I? And like, wait, if I'm not pastoring a church, what, I just have a podcast? Who am I?
Yeah,
what does this mean?
Right.
Someone asked me, what do you do? I'm like, I have a podcast.
Author now. You
You're
can
just but then
Yes.
as the Lord began to reveal it, he had these plans for this full-fledged ministry to really help people and walk adjacent to the church.
Yeah.
And I love doing it. And I'm seeing how I'm built for that.
Yeah.
I wasn't built to pastor a church. I didn't
Yeah.
recognize it then, but now I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm in a convergent season where everything that God wired me to do and everything I've experienced, this is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing.
Will you explain what Nothing is Wasted, the nonprofit, does?
Yeah. So we help people in trauma, tragedy, and major life transition.
Okay.
And we help them find purpose from their pain and
Wow.
take back their story, essentially, is what we tell them. But we do it through content. We have this huge online content hub. We have online community where people can connect with others who have gone through the same thing or are going through the same thing that they've gone through. And then we have about 36 coaches that coach people one-on-one.
Wow.
And it's specific niche areas. So if someone comes to our ministry and they're like, hey, I need additional help because I've just lost a child.
Yeah.
We refer them then to our child loss coach. And the
Wow.
prerequisite is they've gone through the exact same thing. They're just a few steps ahead of them. They've been certified through our Pain to Purpose curriculum.
Wow.
And most of them now are trauma certified as well.
Oh, wow.
So we're just continuing to build this fleet of coaches because early on starting the ministry, I was coaching everybody.
Yeah.
And I can coach people through losing a wife, specifically losing in a violent way like this.
Yes.
But I can't coach someone who's gone through childhood trauma.
Sure.
I don't know. I mean, I could, but
Sure.
I don't know like Teresa Glantz knows.
Right.
I don't know someone who's had an abortion and they're living with this regret like Serena Dykeson knows. Like all these other coaches that we have. I'm like, and that's where I think Revelation 12 comes alive. It's like we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony.
Yes.
To have a guide in front of you going, hey, I know the way.
Yes.
I've been here.
Yes.
And I'll show you the pitfalls that you're going to run into. It's like a Sherpa helping you climb Mount
That's right.
Everest and come up out of the valley. And then the main seminal thing that we do out of all this curriculum we've developed called Pain to Purpose. And we launched this curriculum in churches worldwide and college campuses.
Wow.
And so we're helping churches create spaces where people can heal, where they can actually bring those big questions into the church and have a safe space where they can heal, become whole again, reset some of those foundational rhythms in their life that lead to ongoing healing and wholeness.
Yeah.
And then discover, how do I partner with God to leverage what I've gone through for a greater purpose to help others. Wow. That's what Pain to Purpose is.
Man, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Does Christy work with you?
She
Or
does now. We
okay.
just hired her on.
Really? How was the interview process? How'd it go?
It was great. Our board did the entire one.
Yeah, you're like, I
I'm
can't be
opting
in
out of
any
this
of
one.
this. Yeah, that's exactly right.
I joke
That's
around them.
exactly
She said, the first person I'm firing is you, Davey.
Yeah.
Because I was over here, being the face and going and making appearances and running the team. And it's like, we realized this thing is growing in such a way that we can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
So, we've got a team of about 6 full-time employees and another couple part-time and contractors, and then these 35 coaches. And it's just an incredible thing. And so we just hired her on to really run operations for everything.
That's
so
awesome.
It's been awesome.
That sounds fun.
And now back to finish up our conversation with Davey.
That sounds fun.
Tell about your family now, like Weston, but also.
Well, we have our daughter is Natalia from
Yeah.
Christy's previous marriage. She's got her own story of just, abusive father growing up and a really painful divorce. And Natalia is from her previous marriage, from her divorce. And we have a wonderful co-parenting relationship now. And I just want to, encourage people, like, it is possible. Like, you can have great co-parenting relationship. It's not everybody's story, but it is possible. And she is just a joy and a half.
And how old is she?
She's 11. She's probably also a 7.
Okay.
So they're two just peas in a pod, and they just
Her and
it's
Weston
awesome.
so close in age.
Yes.
That's fun.
So they were really good friends when Christy was attending our church.
Oh,
And they were in
wow.
like kids ministry
Yeah.
together. And I, of course, leveraged Weston to
Yeah.
get some play dates, kind of
Right, that's right. That's
focusing on the
exactly
kids.
right. That's right.
But yeah, so then, it was just the sweetest thing when we got married and blended the family. I'll never forget what Weston said when he saw Natalia come on wedding day, and she's all dressed up. He looks at her and he goes, "Wow, you look like Moana." It was the cutest thing ever. And then in 2019, we had one of our own. So
Okay.
Cohen, he's 4. So now
Okay.
we have 11, almost 10, and 4.
Wow.
And, if you come and hang out with us on a random day, we just moved on to 13 acres. We're
wow.
pseudo homesteading. We got the chickens. So we're
Wow.
building chicken coops or garden. Kids are in baseball and softball, and we're helping churches. I get the opportunity to travel and speak at different churches and organizations to help them. So it's just it's a full life.
Go back and talk to 2017, Davey, who is starting pre-Christy.
Right.
So you're a single guy
Right.
with a kid.
Yep.
You're starting to feel some purpose. You're kind of through the fog, as you talk about in the book,
Right.
of the first year or whatever. Go back and talk to him, because I'm wondering if there are some friends of ours listening who are like, I'm past the initial
Right.
devastation.
Yep.
I do not see light at the end of I do not see a Christy. I do not see the coins at the end of the
Yeah,
rainbow, the
right,
gold at the end of the
right.
rainbow. But I feel purpose here.
Yep.
And I'm trying. So what would you say? What would you say to Davey then? What would you say to those friends listening now?
Well, I would say lean into that purpose, because what I've discovered is that gold at the end of the rainbow, right? We have this idea or this notion, especially if we've lost a spouse, or if we're like in this place where we're feeling like, oh, something's been taken from me. And so God's redemption in my life is when that gets restored
Wow.
or that gets replaced. Well, first of all, that you lost can never get replaced.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
That's a good word.
And that's not the redemption of our story, right? Because we were created to be whole beings in and of our relationship with Jesus. That's it. So no matter what situation, that's why Paul says, I can be content in every season. I've learned how to be content in every season because it's me and the Lord.
Yeah.
I'm going to be cliche, but I'm a preacher, so I'll do it.
Yeah, go.
If you have everything, but you have, you don't have Jesus, you don't have anything. You got
Yeah,
nothing, right?
that's right.
If you have nothing, but you have Jesus, you have everything. And
That's
that
good.
is what I would reiterate to 2018 Davey. Like, that's not the goal or the destiny. Just the purpose that you're finding is the redemption of your story,
Yeah. Wow.
because you're helping others through this.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Even, I haven't started nonprofits. I haven't done, but there are times where I sit across the table from someone at coffee and I go, oh my gosh, I totally get what you're feeling. I remember that. And that's redemption.
That's redemption.
It can be a conversation or a nonprofit or any other version.
The whole spectrum. Because
Yeah.
and some of those conversations are actually more meaningful than running a nonprofit. You get into the business of running a nonprofit,
Yeah, right,
and it's
right.
a business
The
just
work.
like
Yeah,
anybody
yeah.
else. And it's great. It's missional work. It's
Yes,
awesome at the end of that. But those the conversations I have with Uber drivers or on an airplane or just my neighbor or someone
Yes.
at coffee or someone who reaches out,
Yes.
those are meaningful because you realize God has specifically, like the kindness of God, that he has specifically connected us in the divine flow of his kingdom
Yes.
for me to speak an encouraging word into this person that otherwise they may not have received.
Yeah.
And I get to play a part in that.
Yeah.
That is redemption right there.
Wow.
And that was done for me so much.
Yeah.
You'll read about in the book, that I just want to play my part to do that for other people too. So,
I don't know if you know this, but we have a singles community called Single Purpose League where we talk about what is your single purpose and what is your purpose while you're single. Because your
good.
single purpose is to love God and love other people, but
Right.
there's also a purpose for this season. So will you take just a second and talk to, you had an extended season of singleness in your 30s.
Right.
So will you talk for a second about why purpose mattered when when you were not married, like when you didn't have, because so often the church says you'll really.
Yeah, you'll find it when you, Well, marriage complicates things.
Right. Listen, dating complicates things. I'm like, I have a lot more time when I'm not dating.
You actually have to pull back, honestly, with your purpose work, if you will, because now your primary ministry becomes your home.
Yep.
Right? And that's not a bad thing or a good thing. It just is what it is.
Yep.
And that's just the reality of it. If you don't make the primary ministry your home, then your home falls apart.
Is that for men and women, for husbands and wives?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's like, because you go, this is our primary ministry right here, and our kids are our primary. All right, now from there, we as a family, how do we go?
That's good.
Because you can't get internally focused, right? Some people can terminate their ministry on just their family, and now you're running around doing travel baseball, and you wake up 20 years later, your kids are out of the house, and you didn't do anything purposeful for the kingdom.
Ooh.
So what you have to do is you have to go, okay, we're going to make sure that this is our primary ministry, and yet we together as a family are doing ministry, right?
Wow.
That's the way God's economy works. And so, but while you're single, geez, you don't have to check with somebody else. Like when I came here to come on this, I had to go, all right, how do we make sure we orient schedules? And is this a good time to do this, Chris? Can we make sure this happen at this time? Or what's going on with everything? If you're single, you go, yes.
Yeah. Let me check with myself.
I'll be there, right? And so maximize that time.
Right.
Oh my goodness, maximize that time. And it was a beautiful season where God was, he was reinstilling in me a contentment in just being me and him.
Yeah. I mean, it is I've had some pretty profound realization of no matter what, the spouse that is my longest running spouse will be the Lord.
That's it.
That's true for you. It's true for me.
So true.
There is no one who, even if a guy came in my life this afternoon after you walk out, he still will not know me as well or as long as Jesus will, no matter what. And so to me, that even cultivating that relationship and going like, oh yeah, actually the one who's eternal here is me and Jesus.
Right.
And therefore, and that also, the guys I would have married in my 20s would have a much harder time than the guy I'll marry in my 40s.
Yes.
Because I expected him to be a lot of the things that Jesus is. And I don't, now I'm like, if you'll just show up, I'm fine.
Yeah.
I've got a great life.
Well, you realize that nobody can fill that void in you except for Jesus, right? And that's what I loved about Amanda, is that her primary love, her first love, and her first groom was Jesus.
So clearly.
And that was part of my healing journey, was for the Lord to remind me of that.
Yeah.
Hey, I loved her first.
Yeah.
Right? You read about it in the chapter. I loved her first. Yes. I loved her before you. I thought of her before you.
Yeah.
And she was a part of your life for a season, and you stewarded that season well. Yeah. Well done. And that was so healing for me. Yes. Right? Yes. And the same was true for it. And then I had to wrestle with like, well, what about me? Right? How can you?
Right.
How do you? This was so profound for me. I don't even think I put this in the book, but I was like, Lord, I can see how if someone lost a husband, how you could be a groom to them. I can see that, but how do you understand what it's like to lose a wife, a bride? And he goes, Davey, I did lose a bride. I know exactly what it's like. I know the heartache of it. Wow. The bride of Christ, his church, right? And then he had to go and take it back. Wow. And he was willing to sacrifice and die on the cross so that the bride would be rescued. Wow. And when the Holy Spirit just brought that in, it was like, okay, Jesus, you understand everything that we're going through. You get it. Yes. We serve a high priest. Yeah. If nobody else understands in this world what I'm going through, you do. And that's why that relationship is the most important relationship. Yeah. That's it. I mean, we teach that to our kids, right? And teach it to our teenagers, like and then you get to be in your 30s and 40s. And you're like, no, it's actually true, you guys. Actually, it actually is the one that gets the most and maybe takes the most and requires the most and gives the most. And so it is such a gift. What do I mean, there's so much more I want to talk about. I can't wait for people to read this. But is there anything we left out that you want to make sure we say? I do have one more question for you, but I think the two places where you're like, I mean, you're going to see God all over this. Yeah. And that's what I think is so important. I may have already said this, but I don't want people to read this and go, wow, Davey's a really great guy. It's like, I want people to go, wow, God is an amazing God. Yes. And he carried Davey through this. And that's what when you read this, you're getting the aha moments. It's written memoir style. You're getting the aha moments as I'm getting it. Yep. It's not like this cluster of sermons that are written in a book.
Yeah, you don't hardly teach. You just tell us the stories.
Let me tell you what happened.
Yes.
And there's spiritual insight that I'm receiving that hopefully then you'll receive into your own life as well. But you'll notice some things where you go, only God can do that. Yeah. Right? Yeah. I mean, Christy's relationship with, when I first saw her and she woke my heart up and I couldn't explain it. I'm like, why? How did that happen? I don't even know she loves Jesus.
Yeah.
But then later to find out that the reason she was avoiding me like the plague was because her stepdad was one of the chaplains for the Marion County prison system and had been assigned to the 3 men that killed my wife.
Yes.
And you're going, this woman that now is my wife, she's that closely connected with the, only God can write stories like this.
That's right.
And I think that's what I want the reader to understand. I want everybody to understand that God is writing a beautiful story in your life.
Yeah.
Even it may not look like it right now, but I promise you, if you lean in with him and you just wrestle with him and you just surrender to the process, as we've talked about, he will write this beautiful story and show you that nothing is wasted.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. It is a beautiful story. It is such, I can't wait for our Single Purpose League friends to read it. I can't wait for all our married friends to read it who have experienced a loss of some kind of their own, whether it's a spouse or a job or a church or a child. And so it's just beautiful, Davey. It's a very good book.
It's thick.
It is 350 pages, and I read every one of them. So I want people to know that this is absolutely worth the pages.
That honestly means the world to me.
So,
honestly, because I know as a podcaster, you get lots of books. Believe me, I know. And I started trying to read all the books that I was interviewing, and I was like, this is not sustainable. I can't read all these books.
Yeah, that's right. I just don't read anything else. I listen to audiobooks in the rest of my life, but I read everybody who sits across from me.
That just means the world. Thank you.
Well, of course. Okay, the last thing I have to ask you about, a dream has come true for you that has not for me, besides getting married. You've been to Club 33 at Disneyland.
You need to have Bob Goff.
I know.
On the podcast.
Listen, you blew him up by saying that he's the one who got you in, because I'm like, well, now
Did
Bob,
I expose that?
You did. Is it as awesome as they say it is?
It was pretty awesome.
I mean, you went to Disneyland, right? Not
Went to
Disney World.
Disneyland.
You know there's one at every park.
Is there?
I'm not a Disney adult. I do not shame them. I'm just not one. But I am a Club 33 adult. I'm dying to go to Club 33.
I had never even heard of it. This is what's so ironic about all these things is I had never heard of it, did not even know what we were going to when we show up that night. And someone's like, dude, do you understand what this is?
And I'm like, you got to go to the OG one that's on the New Orleans street or whatever. Oh, I know. I went and rang the doorbell one time.
Yeah.
They didn't let me in. So for people listening who don't know, it's the secret society club at every Disney property.
Yeah, from what I understand, you have to you can only allow a certain, if you have a membership, you can only have a certain number of people come as guests on a guest list or something. So theoretically that night we had quite a few people there. Yeah. That it wasn't just Bob. There were other people that were arranging all of this somehow. And I'm like, I don't know how we were able to get in this after I heard.
Because you say in the book, the reason I got there is you say in the book that Allie Fallon, that's where you met Allie, and then she helped you write this book. And she literally was just on the podcast this summer.
I saw that.
Helping. And so anybody who heard Allie, this is one of her proof in the pudding.
If you need help writing a book, I promise you don't want to do it without Allie Fallon.
Yeah,
she was so helpful because I thought that I was writing some kind of a pastor book, but I felt so disingenuous by that because I'm like, I'm not an expert at helping people heal from grief. I can just tell you what I experienced.
Yeah.
And so I started to write this down. She goes, no, I want you to just write your story. Just write it. Just start writing it. And so I sent over the first chapter to her. I'm like, there's no way that they're going to accept this. This is too raw. She goes, yes, this is how we're going to do this.
Wow.
She was so helpful through the process.
Amazing.
So She's
amazing.
Shout out to Allie Fallon.
And Club 33.
And Club 33.
Because I'm dying to get in there. Anybody, Bob, anybody, let me in just one time. I always look at the one at Disney World every time we walk by too. I'm always like, how do you get in there?
Man.
And when you see people walk in, you're like, who are you? How do you do it? It's so expensive. It's so cool. There's one thing you can do for $15,000. 12 of your friends get to come. You get a VIP all day long. Okay. You get access to Club 33, and you get to watch the fireworks and do a massive meal. I have said since 2018, when I get a check that's the exact number, it has to be the exact number. Straight to it.
All right.
But that $50,000 check can come in.
You heard it here first.
We're not hitting that number. Yeah.
Somebody put the address on the website.
You
Send
and
the
Christy,
check.
y'all are in. If I get that check and it happens because of
Done.
this, y'all are
Done.
in. No, dear everyone, please don't send me $50,000. Don't. 15, we'll find it another way. But it is, I'm jealous you've been to Club 33.
Oh.
Congratulations.
It is.
Let's go back.
It was quite a treat.
Thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you, Annie.
Really grateful. And thank you for Nothing Is Wasted. What an incredible nonprofit podcast. But now the book is the piece we needed.
Yeah.
The book's the piece we needed. So
Yeah,
I'm thankful for it.
It's been an honor. Thank you so much.
You guys, isn't he great? Oh my gosh, I like him so much. What a good dude. What a great pastor. One of the things I loved about him is it felt like even though he's not pastoring a church right now, he's still pastoring. I felt that even in this conversation, which I really love. So make sure you grab your copy of Nothing Is Wasted. It is out tomorrow. Go follow Davey on social media. Tell him thanks for being on the show. I actually just got a text today from a guest who was on who told me how, she said, more than any other show she's ever been on, hearing back from y'all like, she was like times 10 more than any other show she's ever been on. So thank you for how kind and generous you are to our guests. If you like this episode, I think you're also going to love episode 477 with Granger Smith or episode 420 with Ann Wilson. If you have any questions from this episode, you can drop them in the Q&A box on your Spotify app if you're a Spotify listener like me, or send them to us on Instagram at That Sounds Fun Podcast. We'll try to answer them there. If you need anything else from me, I'm embarrassingly easy to find. Annie F. Downs on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Anywhere you need me, that is where you can find me. And I think that's it for me today, friends. Go out or stay home. Do something that sounds fun to you, and I will do the same. Today, what sounds fun to me is celebrating one of my friends' birthdays tonight, which I'm very happy to do. Happy birthday to Rebecca Lyons. Y'all know and love her too. Y'all have a great week. We'll see you back here on Thursday with a really important and really special episode with my friend Jonathan Merritt and his dad, Dr. James Merritt.
That sounds fun.
That sounds fun.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Check 1, 2 on the microphone. NEF down in your car to your home. Every week it's something new. A deep talk or an interview. She'll make you laugh, she'll make you cry. When it's dark out, she's a light.